It's Monday morning, no one is ready for school. The dog is barking at the garbage truck, and the youngest has decided his socks are suddenly too bumpy. As you're trying to understand what bumpy even means, your husband walks into the chaos and asks you, "What are we having for dinner tonight?" This scenario is played out often in kitchens across the country. And the chaos of the morning is so stressful, and when you throw in a kiddo having a meltdown, the entire day ends up set on extra hard mode. Why does this even happen? Today, we're going to talk about the science behind the brain fog created by stress and what we can do about it. Welcome to Insights from Inside. I'm Amanda Armstrong, and I understand the morning chaos all too well. With 4 boys, all of whom were at different schools at various points, and both me and my husband working full-time, our mornings were often the most difficult part of the day. I really struggled with becoming dysregulated and having that dysregulation negatively impact my entire day. So much so that the morning chaos was part of the reason for me to make a major career shift so that I can work from home. I'm also very familiar with the brain being stuck in fight or flight mode, which is what happens when the stress of the morning escalates, especially if it includes a meltdown from one of the kids. I experienced some trauma events, including a car accident, that caused a pretty serious concussion. Eventually, I was diagnosed with PTSD in addition to the traumatic brain injury. My brain was literally on fire. And to deal with each part of the issue, I attended a bunch of different occupational therapy, which means I did a lot of vision work, memory games, and relearning how to think clearly. The PTSD that I was experiencing related to the car accident was really severe. I couldn't even sit in the passenger seat, and I could not be on a highway. The PTSD was very much limiting my basic life. And so I began EMDR therapy. A super simplified explanation of the EMDR is that by using rapid eye movement, you mimic the REM cycle, and it tricks your brain into moving a traumatic memory into a less emotional place in the physical brain. Basically, you're forcing the trauma into the logical brain center rather than the emotional one, which allows you to not experience that fight or flight response to that memory or even some of the triggers. For me, that meant that I could actually drive on a highway or even sit in the passenger seat again. EMDR was super successful for me, and it was really helpful so that my loved ones would stop dying in my dreams. I was having these nightmares of my loved ones dying in car accidents pretty consistently. Primary caregivers and default parents are often in trauma mode, partially because they're constantly dysregulated by their environment. For example, if you're done with being physically touched because your toddler was clingy today, or the constant loud noises have overwhelmed your hearing senses, all of that is putting you into this fight or flight dysregulation mode. The science behind why this is happening is pretty interesting. According to Yale neuroscientist Dr. Amanda Armstrong, our thinking brain, the part that helps us stay patient and organized, needs everything to be just right to behave. She calls this the Goldilocks Zone. In the Goldilocks Zone, our thinking brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, depends on a precise balance of 2 primary neurochemicals to function. You can think of them as the volume knobs on your focus. So norepinephrine is a chemical that is responsible for alertness. In moderate amounts, it strengthens the signals your brain needs to pay attention to, helping you stay connected to what matters. Dopamine is a chemical that helps sculpt your thoughts. It acts as a filter that blocks out noise or distractions, and it makes it easier to stay on task without getting sidetracked. When stress floods your brain with these chemicals, they stop being helpful. Instead of sharpening your focus, the high levels actually unplug the connections in your prefrontal cortex. This flips the switch that sends your brain into survival mode, where you react with emotion rather than logic. I was in this mode for probably about 5 years. I still slip into it sometimes related to the car accident, especially if I hear one like in a movie or on TV. Everything I said and did was out of an exaggerated emotional response, rather than the logic of the prefrontal cortex. It was rough for everyone around me. My ability to control my emotions was just broken. All the therapies helped me find that balance, and some beta blockers helped me control my heart rate a little bit better too. Dr. Dan Siegel created a metaphor using the hand to explain how the brain functions. So the wrist is your brainstem. This represents the reptilian brain. It's responsible for basic survival functions like breathing, heart rate, and the fight, flight, or freeze response. The thumb is your limbic system. Tucked into the palm, the thumb represents the mammalian brain, which processes emotions and memories. The tip of the thumb specifically represents the amygdala, the brain's smoke detector for danger. And the fingers folded over the thumb represent the prefrontal cortex. This is your thinking brain, and this area is responsible for logic, reasoning, empathy, and self-regulation. When we're calm, our fingers, the prefrontal cortex, are hugged tightly over the thumb, which is the limbic system, meaning our logic is in control of our emotions. However, when we are overwhelmed or triggered by stress, our fingers flip up. And this flipping your lid effectively disconnects the thinking brain from the emotional brain. And when we're in this state, the amygdala takes over, leaving us very reactive and unable to think clearly or logically until we can calm down and reconnect our lid. When you feel your lid flipping, your prefrontal cortex is disconnecting, and it leaves your survival brain in charge. On those mornings, you will not be successful at dealing with the bumpy socks or remembering what you have planned for dinner. Because of all the brain trauma, I have had to develop some strategies to bring my thinking brain back online. And I use these 3 evidence-based resets all the time. The first is the physiological sigh. What you do is you take a deep inhale through your nose and follow it with a second tiny inhale at the very top to fully expand your lungs. And then you release a slow, audible sigh out of your mouth. Elongating your exhale is one of the fastest ways to stimulate the vagus nerve, and it lowers your heart rate. Another method is the cold water shock. You can splash ice cold water on your face or hold a cold pack on your neck for 15-30 seconds. This triggers the diving reflex, which is a biological hack that instantly slows your nervous system, and it forces your brain to shift out of a panic state. Finally, you can try the name it to tame it method. In this method, you briefly acknowledge the feeling out loud by saying something like, "I am feeling really overwhelmed right now." Labeling the emotion helps re-engage the prefrontal cortex and technically taming the amygdala's alarm response, and it helps you move from reaction back to logic. Before you can help your kiddo with their bumpy sock, addressing dysregulation in both of you is necessary. Modeling and teaching your kids the physiological sigh or to name it to tame it can help calm these morning chaos moments. In fact, co-regulation is an important part of our entire nervous system. Humans are social mammals, and safety comes in numbers. When one person is in fight or flight, another person who is calm can regulate the nervous system because there's safety in numbers. Our nervous system has an actual social engagement nerve called the ventral vagal, which is a nerve only found in mammals. Our nervous systems can talk to each other, so remaining calm is an important part of parenting in general. One of the most important things I learned through all of my therapies was that dysregulation can be managed, but it takes practice. If you would like to learn more about emotional intelligence and strategies to help with dysregulation, I offer a course for parents called Supporting Emotional Intelligence at Home. You can find a link to the course outlined in the description. Do you have a calming technique that works really well? I'd love to hear about it. So please share your favorite strategy in the comments below. I really would like to learn other techniques and try them out myself. Thanks for listening, and if you learned something, make sure to send this podcast to a friend. And make sure to follow so that you don't miss the next episode of Insights from Insight.